Oh, the deep state, I wrote the book Killing Deep State to really expose what I think is shocking, a coup d'etat treasonous conspiracy that started in the FBI to make sure that Donald Trump would never be allowed to remain president, despite having been duly elected with the Electoral College vote. And the conspiracy began in an effort to find grounds to impeach Donald Trump. It spread to the Department of Justice, involved ultimately the CIA and the White House under President Obama. So the heart of my book in the deep state is exposing the Department of Justice, the FBI, the CIA, and the Obama White House, which I identify as the operational parts of the deep state for this purpose, in an attempt to have a coup d'etat to remove Donald Trump from office. The deep state is also working with the intelligence agencies. So, for instance, critical to this coup d'etat conspiracy was the fact that the FISA court approval to do electronic surveillance of Donald Trump's campaign, which came in the basis of using this fraudulent Fusion GPS dossier, which even Comey told the Congress could not be authenticated by the FBI. They still were able to get, the FBI was able to get permission to electronic surveillance of Donald Trump's campaign, which meant that through Carter Page, who I think was an FBI operative implanted in the campaign by the FBI, Carter Page would talk to virtually every key member of Donald Trump's campaign. They became of collateral interest and were also placed under electronic surveillance. That went through the NSA, and the NSA could take all other data they had on these people, including electronic surveillance or emails or telephone records, etc., and put them into records which ultimately went to the White House. Valerie Jarrett unsealed the names, and Barack Obama, I'm sure, authorized the illegal leaking of this information to the press during the campaign and through the transition, which I think is criminal behavior. Largely since, I think, President George H.W. Bush, the bureaucracy has been staffed with college-educated people who are having this new world order kind of attitude, beyond borders, see the United States as ancient or old, the Constitution is needing to be revised. They view themselves there to bring the United States into a international trade and international governance configuration with no borders, open immigration, etc., very much leaning towards the hard left democratic policies. And especially under President Obama, departments like Justice and the FBI became weaponized, as did the IRS, punishing conservatives and benefiting the left. Hillary Clinton could not commit any sins as long as James Comey, together with Holder and Lynch, as Attorney General, were there to protect the Democrats. So when you entered into Donald Trump coming on the scene and saying America first, these deep staters hating the idea of returning to the Constitution basically started committing crimes, conspiring, even committing treason, as to find a way either to prevent Donald Trump from being president, or if that couldn't occur, they were going to find a way to make sure Donald Trump was impeached soon after becoming president. And within the Department of Justice, spreading to the, I think, involving the CIA and ultimately the NSA, these governmental agencies were spying on President Trump's campaign, his transition, and even 6 or 7 months into the White House, trying to find some evidence of Russian collusion, which was, I think, concocted opposition research funded in part by Hillary Research to begin with, that was brought into the FBI, it appears, by John McCain, who was, again, another never Trump hater. And the FBI advanced that to be the basis of the FISA warrant for electronic surveillance, the FISA court, even though the document could not be validated by the FBI or authenticated. And this was the beginning of grabbing onto a lie that Donald Trump had colluded with Russia in order to plant people within the Trump campaign in an entrapment scheme that would provide some kind of evidence or other of interaction with Russia that could be used to impeach Donald Trump. Well, Trump threatens the deep state because Hillary Clinton was about to have, she thought, 8 years to finish off the 8 years of Barack Obama's fundamental transformation of the United States into a socialist or communist European-style government. And we were very close to it. Only 2 or 3 steps remained to be done. The mainstream media was fully in cooperation. The bureaucracy was solidly in a leftist configuration. And Hillary was running a campaign where we were all the deplorables, anybody who didn't agree with her, and pretty soon for homophobia or xenophobia or racism, we were going to be charged with thought crimes. There wasn't going to be any First Amendment because the hard left does not want any dissent. You can see this on the campuses today. There wasn't going to be any Second Amendment because the idea would be to disarm the population, and there wouldn't be any Fourth Amendment because the hard left believes the intelligence agencies would preferentially collect data on conservatives so we could be banned from social media and ultimately put in thought reform camps. Well, in killing deep state, I say Trump has got really a 3-point plan here. One is he's going to have to counter being impeached and ultimately fire or have Mueller be dismissed. And I think the special prosecutor's investigation's almost over. I think he's out of gas. If all Mueller has is an indictment against 13 Russian trolls who will not come back to the United States to face prosecution, and Mueller, it appears, indicted a Russian company that didn't exist at the time the so-called crimes were alleged to have happened. In fact, it turns out that Mueller didn't even know the names of the employees of the firm he indicted. He had their incorrect employees, and the messages planted on social media, the FBI is not able to produce English translations of them. So, I mean, this seems to me to be a far-fetched case that Mueller brought, not thinking it would ever be contested at trial because these Russians weren't going to return. But in fact, the companies named hired lawyers and are demanding an opportunity to plead guilty, which they've done. And the judge in the case, who is a Trump appointee, appears to be on the verge of possibly throwing the case out of court as a prosecutorial misconduct. If that type of thing happens in one of the 3 cases, in Manafort case, which Manafort was charged for offenses that go back to 2005 and 6, 10 years or more before the Trump campaign came into existence, and General Flynn charged with lying to the FBI when the House Intelligence Report, the GOP Majority Report, says that Flynn did not lie. Any one of these 3 cases could be thrown out by the judges for prosecutorial misconduct. And I maintain that that Mueller is a dirty prosecutor with a history of basically prosecuting people and taking any measure he needs to get convictions, even violating the law or violating the Brady rule. He did not hand over to Flynn the exculpatory information that it appears Peter Strzok in the FBI altered Flynn's interrogation report, done in conjunction with Andrew McCabe, who was deputy director of the FBI at the time, in order to make it appear that Flynn lied. All these things are reasons why Mueller, I think, should be dismissed. His prosecution failed to produce any serious indictments of Russian collusion, and nothing has been associated with Trump collusion. After more than a year now, I think we can call for an end to Mueller's prosecutional efforts. The Special Prosecutor's Office ought to be closed. That's phase 1. Phase 2, I think Donald Trump will fire both Rosenstein and Sessions in the Department of Justice and begin for a counterattack on which the Inspector General's information will be used to bring indictments against the treasonous co-conspirators that tried to prevent Donald Trump from being president. And the third act, I say, will end probably at the end of Donald Trump's first term. It'll probably take that long, with military tribunals that bring Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama to trial for treason. Well, the treason is that you have here a conspiracy that started in the FBI, in which they knew that the document they were using, this Fusion GPS dossier, could not be authenticated, and it was opposition research paid in part by Hillary Clinton, did not tell the FISA court judge the true nature of this document, which was used in part as the evidence there was Russian collusion. That's a crime. And then going forward, you have any number of crimes being committed, including unmasking and leaking these names to the press and the White House, given the information that was collected in the FISA court electronic supervision of Carter Page and anybody else in the Trump campaign the Carter Page talked to as collateral interest in the investigation. And that leaking is criminal. So there's any number of crimes committed. And they become treason because the purpose of these crimes was to remove Donald Trump from the president, even if the predicate, the basis for removing him, Russian collusion, was a FBI-invented lie concocted in conjunction with the Clinton campaign. That's going to be the greatest scandal, I think, in American political history. It'll be the greatest treason case since Benjamin Arnold. Well, the deep state's going to fight hard, and it's going to do everything it can to block the effort to be investigated and prosecuted. I'm sure they're going to cover up. I'm sure documents will be destroyed. I'm sure threats will be made to implicate or blackmail various members of Congress, including Republican members of Congress, for their involvement in this treasonous scheme. We're going to find out lots more as it unfolds. But I expect the deep state will not die easy, and I expect Donald Trump will begin the second phase, the counterattack, with the determination to bring the deep state to justice and to clean out these deep state actors that fill the bureaucracy, not just in Department of Justice or the CIA or the NSA, but the IRS and possibly the EPA. The list goes on. This bloated bureaucracy houses many who are loyal yet to Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, the hard left, and a conservative president does not have their allegiance. They're fighting Donald Trump every step of the way. And we just have too big and bloated a bureaucracy that runs its own shadow government. It's time that we fire massive amounts. I say fire 90% of all the people working in the federal government. Not sure that's enough. I'd be happier with firing 100% and starting over. Get rid of some of these departments. Why do we need a Department of Education? Why do we need a Department of Transportation? Constitution doesn't call for these departments. Eliminate, 9/10 of all the federal departments. We started out with a Treasury and a Department of War. Why don't we go back to that? I think the deep state's main ally is the mainstream media, which is deeply indoctrinated. Let's face it, the Democratic Party today is like a communist or socialist European party. Got Tom Perez heading it, the DNC, who is a La Raza attorney. La Raza, of course, is the radical Hispanic rights group that believes that the United States stole a large part of the Southwest from this mythical Hispanic nation centuries ago. And the second in charge is Keith Ellison, who we know now is a former Black Panther and member of the Nation of Islam. I mean, the Democratic Party is so far left, it's on the verge of becoming irrelevant. And if Hillary Clinton had won, we'd have thought crimes. We wouldn't have any ability. We'd be all guilty because if for religious reasons we don't accept the LGBT agenda. Well, that would be like a civil rights violation on the basis of race. And we would be facing a crime. And we go down the list for all the left's ideological purposes, which the left would put in place and not tolerate debate as to even whether these principles like climate change and carbon taxes and all the other income redistribution the left can think of, our freedoms would be severely limited. And so this thinking pervades the bureaucracy. It's throughout the universities, and it pervades the mainstream media. I don't think unless we address the problem of the socialist and communist indoctrination that's going on within our public schools that we're going to begin to solve the problem. The deep state and the hard left since the 1950s, the communists decided they would take over the Democratic Party and make the United States a communist country from within. And I think that except for the election of Donald Trump, they would have achieved that purpose. I think the average person needs to do things like, that's why I wrote Killing the Deep State, was to provide the average reader with good information where you can understand how this deep state has grown to be a threat to our national security and our Constitution since President Eisenhower in his farewell address warned us of the military-industrial complex. This is what it's grown into to pervade the bureaucracy, the mainstream media, the intelligence agencies, and the average person needs to get behind an agenda that supports the Constitution, demands limited government, and major reforms which I think involve reducing the bureaucracy to a fraction of its current size.